Hello, I'm Jacqueline Holstead, and you are listening to On Point Conversations. In this podcast series, we share creative marketing, content, and branding strategies that help your business successfully navigate the new normal marketing environment. In today's podcast, I'm going to refer to a study that was just done. It was released at the end of September by Forbes, and it was a study that it's one of their studies called the Global Culture Report. They started this about 3 years ago, and I didn't pay much attention to it in the last 3 years, except this year was more of a wake-up call because there are more organizations today that really are trying to navigate this next phase of work. What does it mean? Does it mean more remote? Does it mean hybrid? How do we structure the two? What's the best for our employees? What's the best for our company? So when they published this report, I took a really deep dive into it because I thought it was very interesting, and some of the information collected is very good for employers to know. So I'm going to be talking about the 2022 Global Culture Report that really looks at, and I'm going to quote from their report, demonstrates the significant shifts that are continuing to redefine how we work as employees' attitudes evolve and leaders face unfamiliar challenges. Some of these reports and some of the things that they came up with, I think, are real eye-openers, and they also feel the same way. Employee engagement, this is just one example, has dropped 18% over the past year. That's pretty significant. And yet there's still a promising path forward. So don't let that totally drag you down, because even after a year plus of remote work, 61% of employees still see their workplace as their primary venue for forging new relationships and new friendships. This year's report is really particularly illuminating because it comes out at a time, as I said in the beginning, where companies that I work with and I read about are really soul searching. And many are not doing very well because they're seeing this great resignation. You probably read about it, heard about it, maybe you've experienced it. And it really is resetting the balance between the employer and the employee. Now, one of the reasons I took stock of this study is because it is pretty expansive. So they gathered data from 38,000 employees, leaders, HR practitioners, and executives from 21 countries around the world. So I think as far as studies go, this is probably the best at providing a really more in-depth look and a timely look at the workplace culture and employee experience as it is today. So let's go back and talk a few of the points that really caught my attention and caught others' attention too. I said that in the beginning, employee engagement plummeted 18% since last year. That's quite a bit. So it's really a wake-up call to employers, team leaders, entrepreneurs, that employee engagement is very important. And now at the same time, there's also a direct correlation, this is interesting, between engagement, that's employee engagement, which companies can track very easily, like who comes, who goes, how much. I mean, you could talk to a team leader and you could probably tell who's engaged and who's not in the work that they do. But they also correlate that with great work, which is difficult sometimes to track. It's not always the easiest to get a metric for. But when you look at that, better employee engagement means better work. So as an employer, entrepreneur, team leader, it should be a very important point to not just say, well, this is just fluffy and they just need to do what I tell them to do, and engage or not, they need to just move on. But the great work that comes about by having employees engaged is really important. And that might be harder, as I said, as to put a metric against what great work is, but I think you'll be able to tell as a team leader and as a leader of an organization when you see your company doing great work, great products, and offering great service. Another aspect and point brought out by this particular study was that nearly 2/3 of employees say that their social groups at work inspire them to do their best. And yet, nearly half cited that diminished opportunities to interact with colleagues. Now we know as the remote world flourishes, 61% of employees say the workplace is where they form most of their new relationships, new friendships, and that their social groups at work inspire them to do their best work. Yet now we're saying that 45% of employees say the number of individuals they regularly interact with at work has decreased significantly over the past year. And you can see that because you don't get from a Zoom meeting as much interaction as you're going to when you're standing in an office or you're walking up and down the halls or you're in a meeting with other people. So kind of as we take this together, there shows a really important value in creating new opportunities for employees to get to know one another personally. So when employees and organizations give employees the opportunities, the odds of this increased retention and inclusion and engagement and employee experience scores much higher because now they're engaged in their work and not just looking at their work as these are people I see at work, but I don't know anything about them and I don't have any kind of personal experience with them. So in-person events is very helpful. I know that lots of times, sometimes companies will present an in-person event, even though it doesn't happen very often. It's still a very good thing to do. Even though when employees are working remotely, you can still bring them into one in-person event. And I think as we're opening up now, we'll see more of those in-person events. I just had the opportunity recently to talk to an individual who has worked remotely the last 10 years. And his eyes really lit up when his employer took the company to there's a small car kind of racetrack. I don't know much about it because I haven't been there, but he took them there, or she or the company took them there for an in-person event. And he said it was really fun and it was really great to see people in person and to have the opportunity to talk to them and then do something totally different than a work-related kind of approach. And then I spoke to another person recently who worked 1.5 years with a company, totally remote, and they left to work for another company before they met any of their colleagues in person at their previous company. So there was no real engagement. There was no real there was interaction on Zoom and in Slack and all these ways that they did projects together, but the human element was missing. And you'll notice, as I said, he just left the company. So engagement really increases and retention soars when workers have the flexibility in where and how they work. So trying to be a manager that really controls their environment by saying, you need to be here at a certain hour or need to leave at a certain hour, or you can only take your remote days on Monday and Friday or on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday because Monday and Friday would be an extension of your weekend, which isn't a good point. I don't think you can do that and have people feel engaged. I know I couldn't. I don't like that kind of process. So the hybrid work model, let's talk about that for a minute because that's again a place where some people will spend time in the office and then they'll be spending time working outside of the office. And that is something that more this study is approaching, is saying more that it's allowing this flexibility will allow people to be more engaged. And this particular research showed that 42% of hybrid employees currently work 3 to 4 days a week in the office, and they really feel that 3 days is ideal. Now, I think that would be a good process, is to have 3 days in the office and 2 days working remotely, because that allows enough time to have some meaningful connections with your teams and set up that organization culture so that people who are not in the office still feel connected. Now, I would also say that as we're setting up hybrid teams, we look at what days of the week, coordinating those days with what's important. So their meaningful connections can be nurtured and made on the days of the week that those particular individuals are in the office, even though you're giving flexibility to it. Now, the fourth point that I thought was also very telling was 1 in 3 employees felt disconnected from their leader. Now, each year, this particular study measures 6 elements of the workplace. They measure leadership, they measure purpose, opportunity, success, appreciation, and well-being. And employees who feel connected to their leaders are more likely to rate those other 5 high. So, disconnection to the leader causes those other factors to go down also. So helping your employees feel connected. Now, I think helping employees feel connected starts at the onboarding process. How you bring them in, how you nurture them, how you get them in the company culture, offering sincere, and then after that, offering sincere and really pointed feedback so that they know what they're being thanked for, they know what they did, where they did good work. There's a pretty much showing gratitude that they come to work. Involve them. And I think as leaders, we probably need to be in the office when they're there and offer them very growth opportunities. We don't want them just to be stuck. So that connection with the leader also, I found that when I'm more connected with my team or with the person that I'm consulting with or the team I'm consulting with, that I have more information to share and more ideas to share, and it's just a more comfortable situation. And as I said before, once you have that in place, that connection with the leader, then those things like purpose and opportunity and success, appreciation, and well-being, those scores go up also at the same time. Now, the fifth point I'm going to bring out today is that the employee recognition can boost engagement 173%. That's huge. So we know that wisdom points to a strong correlation between employee recognition and healthy workplace cultures. So there's really some really hard evidence here that when you have these personalized recognition, when you're telling people what they're doing well, and not just this overall, oh, team, you're doing great, great work, great work. When you're telling and being specific, that really that affects the culture and the business performance. And that's not an expensive thing to do. That's not an incentive that costs money. That's something that takes time and effort, but is very, very doable, and also something that you'll see reward from. So when you build this recognition into your organization's culture, in this particular study, the employee engagement rose 173%, a sense of purpose rose 114%, and feelings of success rose 151%. And how often we forget really to show employee recognition because it's just kind of assumed, and it shouldn't be assumed. So that's a very important part. So what I want to say is, kind of summarizing this, is being observant and clear when you're recognizing employees for what they've done well in a very individual way so that they know they are the ones that are being given that feedback. And, I did talk to someone recently who works in a very large company in the accounting department. And since working remotely, the efficiency rate of that department has increased, and management took notice, which made the whole team in that department work even harder to maintain their distinction. So she feels great about the recognition. So the recognition that's given to the employees is also very important. I hope this helped you today. Again, if you want to look this up online, the information is there, but I think I pulled out the key points. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to go to my website, which is onpointthinking.com. Go to my contact page, and you can send me an email from there. And you can ask me questions. I often get questions through there, or feedback or information that you want to share. Maybe you have a story you want to share, which would be great. And let me know. I also have an email newsletter, so if you're going to sign up, you can get on my site, you can sign up for that, because periodically I send out, only monthly, I send out a newsletter that talks about what my podcasts are about for the month and what's coming up for the month. So I appreciate your time and listening. I hope you have a great day and that you learned a little something today. Thanks again, and have a great day. Thank you for listening, and I invite you to join me next week as we talk more about specific actions you can take to reach your own business goals. You can find my library of other inspiring podcasts like this one at onpointthinking.com. Again, thank you for listening. This is Jacqueline Holstead at On Point Conversations.